When you think about what life might be like to be one of the greatest sportscasters ever, sure, for so many, to be a sportscaster, it would be your dream job, right? But think about how much you'd love to call, say, baseball games, college basketball, or how cool it'd be to broadcast big-time football. You've probably even let yourself dream even bigger and think about maybe one day I could host, say, Monday Night Football or call a Red Sox game or sit in a tower at the Masters. Maybe even do the impossible. Maybe the Olympics. Well, it turns out some folks' dreams jobs in their wildest imagination is actually a real job because all those experiences are, in fact, that of one man, Sean McDonough. His is a voice that you are no doubt familiar with, and one you will hear this week as mentioned as part of the coverage of this PGA Championship and going forward over the course of the next decade, where he will be a part of the extensive and unprecedented coverage noted ESPN will provide us all this week of this PGA Championship. He is the son of the Boston Globe writer Will McDonough, who I also grew up reading as well. So I'm super excited about having Sean on the program. Delighted to welcome him. And Sean, how have you been?
I've been very well. I really appreciate that, Matt. I've been on a lot of radio shows over the years and podcasts, and that might have been the nicest introduction I've ever had. So flattered and humbled by your words and appreciate it, and happy to be on with you.
Heartfelt, my friend. So how have you been getting through all this stuff? What does someone of your stature, sportscaster, do when you can't do what you do?
Well, it's interesting hearing you talk about the 134 hours of coverage. I've done 0 hours of work since March. I was at the ACC basketball tournament down in Greensboro in mid-March when I remember throwing it back to the studio for an update, as we do so often during championship week. And the studio update was that Rudy Gobert just tested positive for coronavirus and that basically the NBA was suspending its season. And I think for a lot of us, that's when we knew not only the sports world had changed in a very dramatic way, but the world as a whole had changed in a very significant way. So, I've been, like everybody, saddened by all the suffering in the world, the loss of life, the people who've lost loved ones, the people who've been sick and survived it, the economic devastation. And I think for a lot of us, too, it's just reinforced how much we love sports. I used to kind of jokingly say, what do people who don't follow sports do with their free time? And now, I had to figure that out for the last 5 months, and I was really bored for a lot of it. So I'm excited to be here. As we're speaking, I'm at Harding Park and looking at a beautiful golf course, and really excited about a major championship coming up here this week, and I think it's going to be a wonderful week of golf, even without fans.
Sean McDonough, with all that you have done in broadcasting in general, but in particular in golf, was it always an aspiration of yours to broadcast golf, and how and when did that happen for you in the sport?
Well, I got into this. You mentioned my dad, and I appreciate your kind comment about him, too. It's a wonderful thing to be able to say that your dad was the best person you've ever known. But growing up around him, obviously, following him around to sporting events. When I was a real young kid, we used to take a month off from school, go down to Winter Haven, Florida, where the Red Sox had their training camp, and be homeschooled in the morning and then go hang around at the ballpark all day. And I knew from 5 or 6 years old that this is what I wanted to do for a living. It didn't really matter to me, the sport. I wanted to it wasn't necessarily broadcasting because it was broadcasting. It was just a way to stay involved in sports and spend my life in sports as my dad did. So, I didn't really care starting out. If they said, you're going to go to the Olympics and do the bobsled and luge, which I did in 1992, that was great. So, the fact that I've had the chance to do the variety of things that you mentioned, to me, has been the best part of it. I didn't start out just wanting to do baseball or just football. I wanted to work in every season. But to answer your question about golf, that kind of came around by accident. I'm a passionate golfer. I love golf and play a lot of golf. And it was CBS when I was there in the mid-'90s needed to add another person. I think it was largely because Gary McCord came off the Masters, actually. But they gave me the opportunity to do golf, and really loved it. And then when I went to ESPN, we got the full British Open. I think it was in 2010. And Mike Tirico's a dear friend, and he said to our bosses, now that we have 13 hours of coverage at the British Open on Thursday and Friday, we're going to need more announcers, and you should consider Sean. He loves golf, and he announced golf when he was at CBS. So they said that's a good idea, and they invited me to be a part of their golf team, and it's been a real blessing. I'm proud to be a part of it. I think for as little golf that ESPN does, the quality of the production is great, and it's a lot of really wonderful people, and that's the best part of any experience is the people that you're around.
When you mentioned 2010, and that Open was at St. Andrews that year, and as you well recall, I'm sure that was a year that we got buffeted by those massive winds to the point that we had to suspend play. But when you're in the tower, wherever it is, baseball, basketball, football, golf in this case, do you still get the jitters? Do you still have the kind of pinch me moment as you look out across this and go, my gosh, this is unbelievable, and what an honor it is to be able to broadcast this event for the world?
Oh, yes. And I feel that way just walking around Harding Park this week. It's so exciting to watch these practice rounds and walk alongside inside the ropes with these great players and get their insights as we are preparing to do the championship. That was the first Open Championship that I did, 2010, and I remember that vividly, the wind delay, because my tower was really at the loop, which, as you know, is the furthest point of the course away from the clubhouse down, where the course turns around and comes back toward St. Andrews. And it was the windiest place, though. And I remember, being concerned that our tower might not stay up. And at one point,
Whoa.
One of the people from the truck said, "What's that banging noise coming from your tower?" I said, "It's the poles clanging together because this thing is swaying back and forth." So, I actually told the audio person who was in the booth with me and the stage manager, you should go down, that you should, and, so it probably wasn't smart for me to stay up there, but that was a memorable experience. But when you sit there, no matter how much that you've done, Matt, if you don't, if you sit in that tower and look back at the St. Andrews and you think, I'm at St. Andrews, I'm broadcasting the Open Championship on national TV, if that doesn't get you excited, then it's time to quit and, retire.
No doubt about that. Now, when you mentioned that you're at Harding Park, and obviously you guys are putting in the hours before the hours this week, in general, Sean McDonough, is there? This is the way. I mean, a couple months of tournaments with the restart on the PGA Tour, get it, and they've been important and they've been incredibly fun. But more eyes will be on the sport of golf this week, thanks largely to the massive amount of coverage that ESPN and ESPN Plus are providing. But there will be more attention paid to the sport this week than all of 2020 as yet. Is there a message for the game of golf? Is there something that you hope the game of golf will project or benefit from at the end of all of this?
Well, I think it goes to what we were talking about a minute or two ago. I think we're just so starved for any sports that I think some people are watching sports. I just saw Paul Casey when I was walking around the golf course, and he was talking about it's just so nice to have sports. Even if you're not that big a fan of a particular sport, you find yourself watching it because you missed it. And I think that's true. I mean, I love hockey too, but I watched a couple of hockey games the other day that I wouldn't have watched, and I wouldn't have necessarily had an interest in those two teams. But now it doesn't matter who's playing; you just want to watch something. I've half jokingly said, I found myself watching the Game Show Network during this, and I couldn't figure out why. And maybe it was just I missed watching competition. But I think golf has done a fantastic job. Jay Monahan and all the people at the PGA Tour, the way that they thought through this and all the potential obstacles, and just to see it now in person. This is the first event that I've been to of the 7 or 8 that they've had now, and they really have a lot of it figured out exceptionally well when it comes to the COVID situation and testing people and managing the movements of people around the event. It's very, very impressive.
Yeah, it is that indeed. This week, Sean McDonough, it just to throw the net as wide as possible here, What would you say the general storylines are now this early heading into this PGA Championship week?
Well, I think there's so many of them. Obviously, you have Brooks Koepka going for the three-peat. You have Justin Thomas back as the number one player in the world trying to win back-to-back. You have Jordan Spieth going for the career Grand Slam, even though he hasn't played well. I followed him around for a couple holes on Monday in the practice round and was pretty impressed by the way he hit the ball. This is going to be a really hard test. It's 7,200 yards, 7,251, I think, is what's actually on the card as a par 70. But for a lot of these guys, that doesn't sound very long. But as it's right on the water. It's very close to the Pacific Ocean. It's right on Lake Merced, and it's just a cool, damp. I think the first couple of days of the tournament, it may not get out of the 50s, and there's a pretty good wind blowing. So I think it's going to play long and play hard. The rough is very thick, and it'll be interesting to see who emerges. Of course, you have Tiger Woods playing too, so that's always really when he's around. For most of his career, when he's around, he's the biggest story. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares, having played very little, obviously, lately. But I think those of us who watched him play in that exhibition with Phil and Peyton Manning and Tom Brady were pretty impressed by the way he played. Obviously, different type of competition here, but I don't think it would surprise anybody if he fared very well, even not having played very much.
Indeed. So, Sean McDonough, when will we see you and hear you next on ESPN? What will your assignments be this week?
Well, you are, you mentioned it's a dizzying number of hours. We're on Thursday, pretty much 7 a.m. locally here in San Francisco to 7 p.m. either on ESPN Plus or on ESPN Television. And I know CBS has a couple of hours in there. But my assignment on the ESPN TV side will be I'll be in the tower at the 17th hole, and then I'll have the coverage of 5 other holes, 2, 6, 9, 11, and 14. And then for a couple of the days, I think Friday and Saturday, I'll be hosting, in addition to that, the ESPN stuff, I'll be hosting some of our ESPN Plus coverage in the morning in the tower at 18 with David Duval, who's going to be a part of our coverage. And I think he's a terrific analyst. We've worked with him some at some of those British Opens, and obviously he's done a lot of work for Golf Channel. And I just find that when I watch him, I learn something, and he's not afraid to give an opinion without it sounding, even if it's critical, like he's hammering somebody over the head with it, which I think is a necessary skill if you're going to do this, to me, the way it should be done. So looking forward to being with him. And anytime, as I said earlier, man, one of the fun parts for me was when I joined the ESPN golf group in 2010 over there, to be around Andy North, Judy Rankin, and Curtis Strange, and Tom Weiskopf, and all these Scott Van Pelt and Mike Tirico back in those days. It's such a wonderful group of people in addition to their talents. So learned a lot about golf being around them. And, unfortunately, we won't have that entire crew here this time, but really looking forward to being around the people who are going to be here, because it's a wonderful group of folks in addition to their broadcasting talents and for some of them their golfing skills.
Yeah, indeed, and we too are the beneficiary.
Whose golfing skills are not that good, but a friend of mine once said, they let you announce these golf tournaments while you play golf. I said, well, they let me announce football games, and I'm not going to play middle linebacker for the Patriots. So what's the difference?
Well, I can assure you, sir, we're going to be the beneficiaries of your input as well this week. 134 hours of live play coverage over the 4 days of the championship proper on ESPN and ESPN Plus. And one of the primary voices you will hear is the gent who has just joined us, Sean McDonough. Sean, as you know, huge fan, very proud of what you're doing, and delighted that you have taken the time to join us, and very appreciative of the same. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Matt. Thank you very much, and stay safe and healthy, and God bless.